And for tonight's program, I'm going to bring down the editor of Film Comment, Nick Rapold, who is going to moderate. Give him a warm welcome. And he'll introduce tonight's guest.
Thank you, Brian. Well, welcome to the Filmmakers Chat, which I hope is becoming an annual tradition here at the New York Film Festival, when we invite three hopefully lucky filmmakers to talk about their work and about the new film and just the creative process generally. So I'm going to introduce each of them in turn. First, Claire Denis, director of Let the Sun Shine In. Joachim Trier, director of Thelma. And Jerome Everson, director of Tonsler Park. Can we turn on the heat?
Turn on the heat.
It's so warm outside.
Oh, right, it's
and,
cool
air
weather.
conditioning. I'm not used to that.
Yeah. So, well, and for some reason I just thought of the line from your movie, the new movie, where someone asks, "What do you do when you're not in love?" And Julie Binoche says nothing. So now I think, like, what do you do when you're not making films? Nothing. Because right now you're here while you're shooting another film, right?
Yeah, I'm shooting and it's hard. I flew this morning from Germany because I'm shooting in Köln, in Cologne, and I will fly back tomorrow to be on set on Monday. It's a little bit hard, but I was watching the image, the trailer, and it's so dear to be here. Film lives here, it's true for me. And it has been for so many years. And I must say, I thank you, New York Film Festival, very much.
We're very thankful to have you, and Joachim Trier and Jerome Everson have also shown Film Society of Lincoln Center films here. And I mean, that is one interesting thing to talk about, is what is it like showing films in a festival setting, and I guess you get a bit more contact with audiences in that way. Does that kind of add to the creative process for you, that you're able to, you know, talk about the films afterwards with people? Or is it just nightmarish to relive everything?
Well, I come from a very small country, Norway.
But very rich.
True. And very interested in investing that in sports, not only in the arts. But that's another discussion. I find that I never expected my films to travel, and there are only 5 million people speaking Norwegian in the world. So festivals have been a big deal for me as a filmmaker and the group that I work with, to be allowed to travel. And it's interesting because New York, for some reason, my first film, Reprise, got picked up for distribution, but the first time I screened it in the US was New Directors, New Films in New York. It was a really big deal for in my life. It meant a lot. And I was like 31 years old, had done my first feature, and I traveled here, and there was such sort of smart questions at Q&As, and the audience was very generous and warm, and no, it's always been a pleasure to be invited back. So to me, it's meant a lot, just in terms of building confidence in what I do.
Yeah, and me too. Yeah, and I come from the southern part of the United States in Virginia, and so it's interesting that, you know, I live in a college town, Charlottesville, so I don't know, you know, I have a real narrow view of the world that's down there, and then when I come here, another film festival is always, I'm always humbled and flattered that people would actually like come spend their Saturday afternoon watching what I do, and so I just, so I feel like I want to give them my all, so to speak. Yeah.
And your films also kind of travel in art world and gallery context.
Totally,
How does that different?
It's different. It's a different regimen. Like I think I meet more people at film festivals. Although the work is up for like an art gallery for like a month, but some another like the audience are really engaging and stuff at film festival stuff. So I always want to do the film festival circuit. I never just want to do kind of the art museum world stuff. I love the film festival circuit. Yeah.
It's almost impossible to find something that all of you have in common beside being filmmakers, because you all have such individual and unique work. And other than the fact that you are physically sitting next to me, that's something we have all in common.
Common denominator.
That's a common denominator. But I'm curious, would each of you, with your current new film that you have here at the festival, what you were kind of experimenting with or trying new in some way with this film? With Claire, it seems in this film that you're kind of taking on some of the heart sickness or pain that you have in other films, but with some humor, and the dialogue is just very, very funny.
Well, it was a film that took place in my life like a present, like a joy. I was offered by a producer to do that film, and we did it fast, and we didn't wait for nothing, not even for money. Juliette Binoche wanted to be in the film, so as soon as we get enough to start shooting, we did. And it rarely happened like that, when I was in Norway in April and we were together before Cannes, I remember I just finished editing. I started shooting end of January, and in April we had finished. It was like, it's still mysterious for me. So much happiness.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's very impressive.
Yeah.
So, but unending grief, is that what? Yeah. Or, how is the process for you?
The unending grief?
No, I'm just kidding.
Of making movies, you mean, or life in general?
Life in general. We'll get to life in general.
No.
Just making movies.
No, I think we spoke a little bit about this, Claire and I. We met in Oslo, as you understand, in April, and I just have to stop for a moment and say that it's a big honor being sitting here next to Claire Denis, because let me do 2 minutes. Forgive me. Close your ears. I know you hate compliments. Listen, in my life, this lady has meant a lot in terms of the way that I use a camera. Some of the most personal things in a filmmaker's life is what I call the mise en scène, or what the French call mise en scène. Let's not be pretentious yet. What is called mise en scène. So the way you look at something.
In Norway, was it called?
Of course. We appropriate anything French. But so my point is that something that you do as a filmmaker is how you perceive, how you look at something, is the most personal, intuitive choices you make a lot of the time. So when I say that Claire's films have really affected me so profoundly that I think I look through a camera differently because of her. Particularly when I was in film school, I remember feeling that your language of using the camera together with your cinematographer, Agnes Godard, I remember watching Beau Travail 5 times when I was in film school and feeling that it was liberating because it was such an intuitive, free form of using movements and looking at people and getting close to them in a very tactile, specific, physical way. And I remember thinking that felt liberating, and you show people both as heroes but also as vulnerable in the same images, and it's very special, and it's a kind of a humanism that I have been very inspired by. So I was so thrilled that we were invited to do this together. So now you can open your ears again. Anyway, it's a big honor, seriously.
And soon I will go and visit you in Virginia.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we're gonna get you.
You promised.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we're gonna keep to that. But also the Claire Denis Love Fest continues. This the part of,
Wasn't planned.
I mean, for me, what, I know it's all about, I mean, the cockfighting training in No Fear, No Die was amazing, and then that claustrophobic space that they were in and stuff. Like, I used to show that all the time in my class, so, and, Trouble Every Day, all those films are amazing, so, yeah. I forgot what there was a question for.
We all went into the Claire Denis phase.
About the process, but
Or
the
just
film,
if something you were experimenting new with this particular new film that you were embarking.
yeah, I think this is the only film I ever shot. I shot a feature in a day, and before people like, I actually shot African American. I shot long take portraits of African American election workers during the 2016 election. So the film had to be shot all in one day, and once I got the footage back, like it was cut in maybe a day or something like that. So the whole idea of so that was the kind of first time I've kind of worked that fast and athletically before. Yeah.
And did that feel liberating, or was it?
Oh yeah, get it out of the way. Yeah, it was done by like Thanksgiving, and then so I like that kind of approach to filmmaking. Just have it all kind of muscled up in one day. Yeah.
And something else strikes me about that, which is that when you start the beginning of that day shooting that film, obviously you didn't necessarily know what the results of the election would be.
Most African Americans knew what the result was going to be. I think only white people were freaked out. I remember shooting that. I was the first to vote because I was actually there shooting. I was setting up the camera, so I was the first in line. But even when we wrapped up at 7, we all knew that Hillary's going to lose. I just had this feeling. But my voting, just where I live at, it's very democratic. But I just, unfortunately, the ruling class votes against their interests. So, but everybody I knew, so we weren't really surprised by it. So, unfortunately.
Yeah, because I'm always interested how the circumstances of shooting and events as they come up affect what you're doing, kind of incorporating accident and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it didn't much, I was just concentrating on, for me, I was telling the Q&A just earlier today, I was thinking about, that morning of the 2008 election, just when I was trying to film this one, the whole idea of that was liberating, so to speak, but now I was just concentrating on just making portraits of the election workers, so I didn't really think about that with that particular election.
And Claire, it comes to mind a little bit with this one, the ending, which again is just I love it as well. But that wasn't sort of how you planned to do it necessarily, right? To have credits, or was it going to be longer, or maybe I'm misremembering?
No, I think I was so terrified when Gérard Depardieu told us, okay, it's one day. He came one evening to do the short scene in the night in the car, and then he said, okay, I love to do this, but do it in one day, because I'm tired, I have only one day. And I start freaking out because there was 7 pages of monologue, because it's almost a monologue. But I thought, this is the end of the film and I have to jump. I cannot refuse. And we did it, and we edited on a Sunday and 16 minutes. And I told Guy, the editor, I told him, I can't imagine shorter. I can't imagine we are going to make a 4-minute out of this. It's this or nothing. And then I came up with this idea to put the credits on it, so we could keep it long and.
So that's how you were able to run it at length, was having the credits. Otherwise, people wouldn't have. I would love to see him go on for another 20 minutes.
Yeah, because it's a fantastic actor, because he's making everything new and he's repeating, almost the same sentences, but with such a presence and charisma, and even when we made only 2 takes on each, you know.
If you only have a day, that's kind of too much time.
But even while shooting, I was like mesmerized. I was like hypnotized by him, you know.
And you always developed like very kind of this kind of close rapport with your actress in a film, and in this case, Juliette Binoche, I think you once described just how how deeply you get into that and how necessary that is for doing it as well.
One day I meet her in a restaurant and she was wearing this loose t-shirt and I could see the cleavage between, and I say, hey Juliette, it's great to see your skin and your body. Let's make the film also with your body, not to hide it under clothes, but to have it the fullness of your skin and your hair and your everything is so. Juliette is. You can't stop looking at her, not because she's more beautiful than other, but because she's so alive. She has a sort of heaviness even, And I thought, let's do it physically, please,
No, you really definitely feel that in the film intensely. Joachim, in your film, I mean, it's also a film that's very much centered on a person's conception of their body and their feeling of their body. So, I mean, I guess that was also kind of a factor working with your actors, because that's part of it. It's like a coming-of-age movie, but in a very extreme way. But how do you introduce, or how did you think about putting the supernatural element in it, or the question of the supernatural element in it, adding it to that mix?
I think with Thelma, I wanted to break away from certain virtues and kind of good taste of clean drama and try to do something larger than life, something more spectacular, to access different types of images. We changed the whole way we work. We used anamorphic lenses, a wider screen. I have used music differently. So the whole idea was to try to liberate myself from a type of style that I felt I got a little bit stuck in. But at the same time, I ended up talking in this film a lot about feeling alienated and lonely and longing for the things you can't reach, and a lot of human questions that I guess I didn't want to get away from after all, So there's always this ambivalence, but it's good to try to push on. And so the supernatural film or story is, it has many roots. In America, there's been, all the Stephen King stories, there's been some really wonderful films like Rosemary's Baby, or I think The Killing by Tony Scott is remarkable. There's a lot of that, but there's also in Norway a lot of fairy tales and a lot of myths from the past that are baroque and that deal a lot with the ambivalence of nature. And after all, we are a part of nature, and it's very often the either stigmatization of nature or the creatures of the woods as a threatening thing for the people in the cities, and that kind of. So I guess I grew up with hearing those old fairy tales, and I what I liked about them at best was that they were exaggeration of relatable human problems. So the supernatural to me was just another addition to try to create something more allegorical around what was a human story.
And Kevin, I think in some ways, you're finding. You're very concerned with showing people at work very often, but you're showing it in new ways that kind of defamiliarize yourself with it, but also refamiliarize yourself with it and show the people in that kind of portraiture. I don't know if you could talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I like to kind of make the kind of what people would see invisible visible, and then the whole idea, like when people go to vote, they just like go in there and and just give their name. Depends on what state you are, your ID, or county or district, and then you go vote. But also too, there's a lot of muscle and a lot of people who go behind that to make democracy work in a sense. And I remember when I used to live in Cleveland, Ohio, there was always in the African American community, there's a lot of voter suppression that we keep telling people about, but they don't listen. The ruling class never listens. And so I remember there'd be like tow trucks near the voting station, and if you live in a big city, you all got dirty license plates. So if you go there, you may get towed. So it's like actually intimidation. So I just remember the women there working there would be so angry about voter intimidation. So I just want to make film like just to kind of honor the people who keep so-called democracy going, so to speak, like do the dirty work and do the kind of functional work that keeps kind of voting happening, so to speak. And then that whole idea of the nobility of labor and the pride that people take in this and stuff, I think is very important.
Yeah. I mean, it seems a time where it's almost hard to not have a kind of political strand in the film in some way or some sort of thread. I mean, in Let the Sunshine In, there's some really good dialogue with the banker character, and I also love that it almost seems that's coming from a kind of place where there's a certain impatience with a very comfortable bourgeois, upper bourgeois set.
Yeah. Of course, it's the film in a modest way speaks also about social classes, because it's there all the time, actually, and that's why I wanted so much all these men surrounding Juliette Binoche to be not only actors, some of them are directors. I wanted them to be maybe only 1 or 2 days on set, but to be strong enough to face Juliette, who was in every shot, I was fearing the idea that I was going to cast actors that would be with us only 1 or 2 or 3 days and then go. But the banker is Xavier Beauvoir, is a famous French director, and so on, So there was no intimidation. There was a sort of balance.
He's used to being in charge. He's used to being in charge in some way.
Yeah. And a lot of them, except Nicolas Rapold, who is really an actor and as the part of the actor, but it was important for me that they were not like in so many real story. Casting is always to offer small part and big part, So already there is this sort of injustice.
The class system in the casting.
It is true.
Yeah.
You know that.
Well, in the interest of recognizing all the different classes, maybe it's a good time to talk about the filmmaking team, because I know each of you work repeatedly with similar people. Who are the people you return to? I guess, Claire, for you, your cinematographer is very important to you.
Agnes, yes, we met in film school. We became friend won't be the right word. We had a sort of shyness to each other, but same interest. So it protects us to become real friend. We became companions of film, it's better, what I mean. And Friday in Germany where I work, Jane Campion was there to receive a prize. And she said something that touched me. She said, I start making film without knowing I was making films. And suddenly, at my age, I realized people speak now of a career, And I think Agnès and I, we were the same. We never thought we were going to have a career. We suddenly realized 30 years after we had made films. No, but I think it is very important for us to still believe we are at the beginning of something, looking for something together, not sure we will find it. Yeah.
Joachim, for you, it seems like your screenwriter is someone you work closely with, or
Absolutely. Yes, Eskil. He's in New York. He couldn't come tonight, but yeah, I know he's very important, and we share love for cinema. Like we met as film nerds, really, just going to the Cinematheque when we were in our teens. But I'm thinking about something you said now about the almost naivete of creating images that I think is very important to sustain in working relationship. I went to the Swedish Film Institute for a talk, and there was someone there, a woman who had done research with kindergarten, with kids, and tried to see, we have all these cameras around us, how can we make children create movies? And she had asked them, given them cameras, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, and said, tell me a story. And the kids were very confused, telling a story. And then she had rephrased, and she had said, show me something. And the kids were like, oh, yeah, sure. There was a little hole in the kindergarten where there had been a mouse once, and they were like trying to be the mouse with the camera, or they were showing a little part of something with a sandbox, and she showed us the film. They were rather exciting. They were little phenomenal, visions from kids. And I grew up with the camera because I come from a film family background. My grandfather was a director. My parents worked with films. And I remember, I can identify with what you're saying, that at the end of the day, I'm still quite sort of stupidly just wanting to show people something, the observation of something, rather than to tell a story or to make a point, because I'm not sure about things in the world. I don't really know what to tell people, but I'm pretty curious to show them something that I've seen, behavior, a place. A way that light creates mood or something. And then in collaboration, you need to work with people who have that same curiosity. And Jakob Ihre, the cinematographer I worked with a lot, I met also in film school. And I remember he let me be a part of dealing with the camera. Sometimes he gives me the camera, He's a much better operator than me, so I'm glad he does it most of the time. But once in a while, he just says, yeah, what are we going to show people? It's that spirit. And there was just this quick thing. I remember he's Swedish, and he's wonderful with lights. And I remember he was such a fan of Sven Nykvist, Bergman's cinematographer. And when we were kids, we were quite young in film school. And he was a bit younger than me, and we didn't really know each other when we shot our first short film together. And when we were done, I remember him doing this very sweet thing, and he didn't realize that he was kind of paying a compliment to me by saying this. But I remember him saying, well, that Sven Nykvist and Bergman, they're not such great friends when they don't shoot, but I hope we can be friends. I said, please, yes. We don't have to try to copy Bergman and Nykvist and everything, and we're still friends.
Yeah, I mean, I come from the fine arts. I mostly did photography and printmaking and sculpture and painting in art school. And then I think after art school, I moved to this kind of crazy community. I moved to Cleveland, and then I lived in this thing called the Hodge School, which is this elementary school that's converted to artist loft. And my man, Khalil Pedicai, Dominique Brown, Nate Page used to be around there, and Michael Lodestad, and my name Nick Charles, and then so I still work with people who in this community. So it was a nice kind of artist colony in a sense, and I remember being in like college for like 6.5 years, and thinking that my first year and a half or first year out of college I made twice as much artwork because I had this kind of support system, so to speak, that people would look at your stuff and help you, stuff like that. So I just kind of created this community, and then so when I'm teaching, I like to make sure the students have this kind of community, so to speak. And and sometimes I use students as the crew, and they kind of know what I want to do. I think Ellen Z worked on about 3 or 4 films. She's in the audience, and awesome rapper. And then so we started, and then for Tonsler Park, I use some of the students who also kind of worked with me before and stuff. So they kind of know what I want and know what I'm doing. So, lately my scripts have been written on the palm of my hand and like say we're going to do this and like cool, and everybody sets up and do things. So I kind of like that, yeah.
That's great. Well, we have a packed house here, so it would be mean of me not to turn over for some questions from the audience.
Hi, good evening. My question is for Joachim Trier. I'd like to know a little bit about the spiritual aspect of your latest protagonist, Thelma. I saw the movie and I found that her body is in sort of a displacement of physical, spiritual. She's in transformation. Can you tell me a little bit about your insight on her transformation? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. It's a tricky one to answer because the film is sort of a pondering upon spirituality and religion, science, and placebo, and the thing that we can't control our body. And for those of you who haven't seen the film, it's about a young woman who starts experiencing these seizures, almost like epilepsy. And it turns into a story where she's actually suppressing her love for another woman, and she comes from a very restrictive, repressive religious background, and it makes her very difficult to accept the love that she's experiencing. And then it turns into a supernatural story, where her true will, her true passions start manifesting themselves in the world. I did read a lot of I started reading things from the occult. I'm an atheist, I don't believe in God. But I'm also very curious, and I think the world the older I get, more and more mysterious. But I've never found, and this is a personal thing, but I've never found a religion that gives me the answers. And I guess I'm also kind of politically skeptical of religious history, but I do respect personal faith a lot. And I guess I've been yearning and trying to find a lot of answers, as we all do. And in this film, I started reading about the occult, and I started reading a lot about the book of Thelma by Aleister Crowley, which is often sort of used by people who worship Satan and stuff, but it's been giving him a bad name. But actually, he's an interesting thinker, and he's trying to challenge us with the premise of recognizing a true will. Thelema in Greek means just true will, and Thelma, the name, derives from that. But the thing is, you create these things from various places of inspiration. And then at the end of the day, I try to keep an open space for questions. So I don't want to say anything conclusive about it, but I appreciate your question, and I hope it made sense to you. So
here in the front row.
Good evening. This is a question for Joachim. I was very struck by your lead actress. I know this is very subjective, but she seemed to me to emit a kind of light or glow that made her very transparent. And I was wondering if that was something that you were looking for when you cast her. Could you talk a little bit about how you found her and what you were looking for?
Yes, Eiley Harbo plays Thelma, and she's someone who's done some acting, not so much. And not this type of lead role with the physical demands. So in the film, she needed to train underwater training, and she also went through a lot of physically challenging things. We did auditions. I met people, several hundred young actors for this role, and I guess the dynamic of something very subtle and very natural in her, and at the same time something so powerful from such a young actor, I found really interesting. We discovered something. There's a way of dealing with psychological trauma called TRE. It's an American invention called seizure therapy, and we because she was acting these epileptic fits. I actually sent her to a therapist that could teach her through breathing and yoga exercises how to get her body into these kinds of fits on purpose without necessarily dealing with trauma, just a kind of physical thing. And she went all the way and started doing that. But it was kind of interesting because we very often motivate our when we work a performance through some sort of dialogue or something. But in this case, she had to just prepare physically for 20 minutes, and then she would kind of do these things. We would try to catch it with the camera, and it was a very different dynamic, actually. And I thought it was inspiring to work with such a brave person who would try anything to try to get to what we were trying to achieve. The transparency, I don't know. It's a beautiful sort of poetic thing you're describing. I'm glad if it worked that way. Obviously, I can't make her transparent, but I think there's something about her presence that can be very naive and at the same time other places very strong, and that's her really doing that.
In the second row here.
Hi, my question is for all three of you, since I think all three of you are so inspiring and exciting in how you're creating very individual, personal cinematic languages that you continue to explore in every film that you make. What is it that you personally need on every production that you work on, every set that you're part of, to be the filmmaker that you want to be? Practical, social, emotional, professional. Take it any direction you like.
I think I can start because I don't have an answer, so it's easy. No, honestly, I think there is a sort of there is a void, and probably the attraction to go beyond my capacity of making a film, but to believe, not in me, but to believe in cinema in general, and to let it go without too much technique, without... I need to be in a sort of... I need to like the people I'm filming, I need to know them, I need to trust them. I need to be very emotional. So then I fear, of course, making a bad film, but each day of work is it's a sort of balance between what I am able to do and what I will probably miss, you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think I just need a clear understanding of the subject matter, and also to be probably confident in all the sophisticated relationships to get to that point, whatever that is.
No, I think it's a very relevant question, and as you see on our answers, it's a challenging one. I need to be safe. I need to have the people around me that I trust. I need to like the atmosphere, and I also need to create that atmosphere. So I need other people to help me with that. But I think it's important. I often think the more films I make, and I only made 4, but that there is something in the profession that's kind of this military structure, and at the same time you're trying to do something more poetical. And it's trying to sustain what you were talking about, vulnerability, under the conditions that are sometimes really, really pragmatic and tough, and not becoming a robot, allowing yourself to fail and being vulnerable to me. And that you get inspired from the actors, because the actors have that issue that they're dealing with all the time. They are continually trying to be in a vulnerable place, an open place, and so I find that to be the focus point. And like you, I lose faith a lot during shooting. So it's also, you got to figure a way to forgetting and leaving all the stuff you feel you missed behind you, and be there in the moment, because half the time it just feels like I'm completely failing. So
In the back.
Hi. Well, this question is for the three of you, but mostly for Claire. Yes. As an actress myself, and as you said, Joachim, like vulnerability is one of the main components of what we are able to bring to the table. But what or how do you decide which actor or actress gets the chance to be a character in one of your cinematic creations?
Is this for me? It's for all of us, right? Yeah. I can start. It's the million-dollar question. I don't know. It's the answer. I don't know. And I think I will never let someone in front of the camera that I won't kind of love to a certain extent. You know, not a that kind of love. But, you know, you really need to care about them, because you got to keep drawing energy from them, even on the days when they're in real trouble and the days when they're not at their most happy and all that stuff. So it's a process of also getting to know people a little bit before you cast them. I think it's always a healthy thing. I think you said it very well, Claire. Also, that collaboration, you need to like them, you need to know them, get to know them. I think, and that's always sometimes tricky in casting. You can't always. So I meet people several times before we kind of decide whether we're going to work together.
Yeah, I think for the first time of my life, this in Germany, in Köln, where I'm shooting now, I was asked to work with someone who wanted really to be in that film, and for the co-production it was good, and I knew this actor. I knew him very well. I've seen him on stage and in films, but I don't know why it was not my demand. I was not in demand for him. I was not wanting, and I spent the whole week shooting with him, and I realized I had to create something very crazy. A sort of, I start to be very negative with him, very a bad person, you know. Like I'm always trying to protect the actor, and suddenly he was sad, I was sad, and to create a sort of electricity that was missing. Something was. Yes, Claire, you know him, you like each other, why not? But, yes, why not? But that little thing was missing. And that little thing is maybe attraction, maybe. So through that fight and bad words, maybe there was something. No, I'm not joking. I was fighting. Maybe it creates something, but it was really, it's first time it happened in my life, you know. Normally, casting, you don't, I'm sure you experience that. It's like in life, somehow you meet someone you know. Maybe it's a less experienced person, maybe it's, everybody might tell you it's the bad choice, and you know, it will work. Or you will be happy to meet that person every day. It's moving. It's like it's a sort of love, you know. Me, for instance, if I can say something stupid, but it's true. I know my relation with actor because I'm a shy person, and suddenly after 2 or 3 days working, I know I have to touch them, but a lot, you know. I mean, like touch them, to push them, and to touch them, to be familiar with their bodies, you know. And suddenly I was shooting with this little English girl. She's 15, and I like her a lot. She knows I like her a lot, and we share really something strong. And suddenly I wanted to, she was not exactly for the camera, and the cameraman told me, could she move a little bit on her right? And I came and like tenderly, I took her in my arm and moved her like one step. And she couldn't stand it. She said, no. You tell me to do it. I will do that step. But please don't touch me like that, you know. And I was terrified because I said I did something gentle, you know. But on the other hand, I understood that's the exact reason why I like her so much. She's very mysterious. I think I will never touch her again like that. But she has something special. I didn't know. But now I understand why I like her. I'm sorry, I've been in the plane all day.
That was beautiful. That's very interesting.
I think, unfortunately, we're sort of running down to the end of our time here. I am kind of curious. This is sort of a crazy question, but I'm just kind of curious. You know, as filmmakers, you often have to deal with limited resources and and all sorts of constraints. I'm curious, what's the story you would want to tell if you suddenly had all the resources you want, or do you kind of need those constraints in some way to just a small question at the end, I thought.
Or if we had more money?
Yes.
I'd probably, I'd make films for about like $2,000 or $3,000 a pop. So if I had like $100,000, I'd make 30 films. So it'd be like more films instead of
more.
Instead of $100,000 film, I'd have like 30 $3,000 films. Yeah.
I think art isn't the compromise. So I do my best every time. This is important since there are other filmmakers here and we're colleagues. And I think it's very important to step away from projects where you will restrict your collaborators too much so they won't be able to really do what they need to do. And I think that's very important for a director to take responsibility for other people's creative process. Everyone will be pressured and there won't be enough time and there won't be enough money, but to be kind of smart and responsible about not exposing people, particularly actors, to impossible situations. I think that's a responsibility we have. So as long as you feel it's responsible, then pragmatism, a bit of luck, you'll get far with the money you have, I find.
I have realized that it's a very reassuring thing for me not to put the producer in bankruptcy. No, it's true. It's a joke, but yes, it's true. It's very important. But I think I admire people, directors who had invented their own system of creation, as you say. If I had more money, I will do more films. And there is a good example here in New York Film Festival is Aung San Suu Kyi, who is now probably up to make 4 films a year in 10 days for each film. He invented his own economy. He invented because his first film were not like that at all. But he realized what he needed most is not, he realized the lack of money was painful, so he invented a way to tell story with actresses he liked, now he loves, with absolutely what they need, what he needs, the minimum, but not a minimum of frustration, a minimum to be at ease. And for me, when I'm lost in my fear, I think of him. I think, yeah, Sang-So did it, so it's possible.
That's a wonderful note to end on.